Hey guys, Michael Petito here, and I wanted to talk today about building modularly. Now, in HighLevel and marketing automation systems, building modularly is a fancy buzzword, and what it really means is that we're building things so that they're kind of independent systems that are working together. We're not making one big giant system that's all interconnected and woven together and maybe even hard-coded together. It means that we're building things in little mini silos. So we might take an opt-in form, our opt-in system, and we're going to kind of build that in as a self-contained feature that would work on its own, but we're also going to build an onboarding, or maybe a nurturing module. And we'll build all these little mini systems and then connect those guys together. The advantage of building modularly is that it gives you the flexibility to just call the system that you need when you need it. And it's not the whole system isn't firing all at once. Let's say you had like an airplane that has 10 engines, right? As opposed to one big giant engine. Now, if you have one big giant engine, the entire engine's got to fire. You got to pump all that fuel in to keep it going. But if you have 10 smaller engines, it allows you, when you only need one or two of those engines to kind of coast through the sky, you could just use one or two engines. And then when you need to climb up or you need a little extra speed, you can turn on just the engines that you need to get the job done. It's a lot more efficient. Now, so back down to earth here and landing in HighLevel, building modularly, it comes down to defining your workflows. Instead of having a single workflow that does 10 different things, right? This is a workflow that's doing a whole bunch of different unique functions. Now, if we're building modularly, we might say we're going to have one workflow that kicks off that adds them to the pipeline and updates the opportunity. We're going to have a second workflow that is just going to send them the email messages for that lead magnet or that opt-in. And then finally, we're going to have another workflow that is specifically for dealing with stale leads, people that got through to the end of the system. We're going to put that in its own workflow and manage what happens once they get to the end. What's the value in that? What it means is, one, is if anytime we want to send that messaging sequence, we can trigger exactly that. When it comes to troubleshooting this system, if let's say like we're pushing out a new update, version 2 of this snapshot, it means that we don't have to overwrite the entire system. It means that we can overwrite just the parts that need updating. So if we're updating the emails, or let's say we're updating the core logic, but we don't want to touch the emails because maybe they customize those emails. Now it means that we can do the update on the technical backend and leaving the customizations of the emails, that's all alone, and there's no problem there. And this is why we have like templates, right? Like with email templates. You don't need to change the workflow. You can just change the email template in your snapshot and it will give you the same effect. You don't have to rebuild everything every time you change your email. So where does this go? But this gets even crazier. And so building modularly, okay, that's really cool, some workflow stuff. But guys, it's even bigger than that, because think about with AI, the new AI features in HighLevel, you now have the AI that's able to trigger workflows. How is that AI going to trigger workflows if you have just one big workflow with everything all in it and all encompassed in it? Or if you have a couple different workflows and they're kind of just randomly interconnected, more just out of convenience when you were building rather than with any kind of defining features and defining the workflow of what we wanted it to do. So if you've been building modularly all this time, let's say using tags to trigger workflows instead of just directly linking them, saying, hey, at the end of this, we're going to say the client has done the email sequence. They finished that. So we're going to then use a tag to trigger the other workflow to clean up the pipeline, mark them as lost or stale, etc. Well, if you've been doing that, now you've given the AI the keys to the kingdom, because instead of having to make it complicated, you can just say, hey, if this happens, AI, add this tag. And now you can fire off this. Or, hey, if this stops happening or you learn this, you could remove this tag, or you can add this tag to stop the whole sequence, right? Because you've already pre-programmed in the logic for managing your snapshot through tags. All you now have to do is give the AI that tagging structure, and it can do everything. It can manage the whole thing. If your snapshot is just a spaghetti mess, then you're not going to be able to plug in an AI to that. Whereas if you've done it modularly, it's a lot easier to integrate AI and also to future-proof things. Because if you spent a whole bunch of time building modularly a year ago, okay, yeah, it took you a bunch of extra time, a little bit slower to launch, sure, right? It takes a little more discipline. But now you're laughing because you just saved all of that time having to rebuild your snapshot to take advantage of the AI, or you're able to just add AI into this system, and it's going to take almost no work at all because you've already done the groundwork. So hopefully this point is getting made is that I can't stress enough that being able to think is systems thinking, designing workflows and snapshot design. How do you manage things? How do things actually interconnect together? These sort of things, which might sound like a just giant waste of time if you're just trying to get something done for the moment, these sort of things are the things that are going to really scale your business, because scaling doesn't mean just launching today. Scaling means it's going to keep working. It's going to keep growing day after day. And if you're not starting to design your workflows and your snapshots with these concepts in mind of building modularly, of designing your snapshots and your workflows to work with AI, you're going to be spinning your wheels and finding yourself wasting a lot of time having to refactor things, having to rebuild things, retool it in order to adjust to being able to use the newest feature. So what does this mean for you guys? Well, number one is that documentation is the new automation. And what we mean by that is being able to make a system that an AI can understand by documenting things in a way that an AI can understand the context and intent of what you're trying to do. That is going to be the biggest thing, because when we don't have to actually hand code and build everything. If you can just tell the AI what you need and you can define it in a way that it can just get things done, that's going to massively, exponentially scale your business. Number two is that snapshots are still the glue of a high-level system. You need to learn how, and you need to master, how do snapshots work? What are those little peculiarities of how do you build them? How do you manage them? How do you update them? Because knowing that is going to be the difference between being able to take advantage of the latest and greatest feature and being able to stay ahead of your competition and to keep people engaged in your platform and not just churning away because they're seeing all this flashy stuff everywhere else. Learning how to manage your snapshots is going to be massively critical. And third big takeaway is that agencies are becoming SaaS companies. You've already been a SaaS company. We've already said it, right? We're SaaSpreneurs. We're selling SaaS. What does that mean? We're selling software as a service. So if we're selling software as a service and we're building snapshots, which is essentially software, then we need to get very serious about becoming a SaaS company, learning how to design good product, how to design marketing systems that can be iterated and improved over time, that can be flexible, that don't break very easily, that can be easily troubleshooted. These are all of the things that you need to be doing if you want to survive in marketing in the next, maybe it's a couple months, maybe it's the next year or two. But these kind of skills of learning how to think as a system, how to think modularly, how to think up and define exactly what it is, instead of just what it is that you're trying to do. So instead of just saying, hey, I build a system and I just go in and fix things and build it to do this and that, if you can actually explain exactly the scope of every mini feature within your automation system, that way of thinking is going to scale. Whereas anything else that you build willy-nilly, it's going to burn out very quick. You're going to see a shelf life on that way of building and designing your automations. I want you guys to really think about how you are building and designing your snapshots. Start learning and practicing building things in a more modular way. A workflows that do just one thing, that are triggered not by direct connecting them, but thinking about how do you trigger these workflows independently so that they all work on their own and that they can be managed easier. So, a pro tip if you are an agency owner, a freelancer, or somebody who just makes a lot of money by building snapshots and high-level accounts for people, then I'd love to invite you to the Agency Unbound membership. There's a lot of free training where we give all of the basic principles at agencyunbound.com/free training. But we also have a paid membership where we meet and talk about these things. We have lessons and courses and example snapshots, documentation tools, and just a group of lovely people that are pushing the bounds, that you can talk about this, that you can work with and get some support and start learning how to build like a system.